Good afternoon. Welcome to Insights Teen Treatment Hour here on KHTS, Santa Clarita's hometown station, AM 1220 and FM 98.1. Each week during this show, we talk about different aspects of how children and adolescents are impacted in relation to mental health issues as well as substance abuse related issues. At Insight Treatment Center, we work with adolescents and families who are struggling with mental health and or substance-related concerns. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Janine Kanaventi, or Dr. K. Janine has a private practice, and she does a lot of work working with adolescents and families in court systems and really complicated, high conflict family situations, which she will share a lot about. She is a clinical psychologist here in the Van Nuys area. And so we look forward to connecting with her and hearing more about the work that she does to provide support and treat adolescents, children, and their families. And before we do that, just a little bit about Insight. Again, we are a intensive outpatient program servicing adolescents and their families. We're here right locally in Santa Clarita and have locations in Van Nuys, Pasadena, El Monte, El Segundo, Modesto, Merced up in the Central California area. And if you are listening and have an adolescent or know of somebody who is struggling with mental health related issues or substance abuse, please don't hesitate to connect with us and we will help steer you in the right direction. Okay, so without further ado, welcome, Dr. K.
Hi, thank you for having me. Really excited to talk.
Happy to have you here. So if you could share a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in the field and specifically the specializations that you provide services.
Sure. So I've been in the field for about 16 plus years. I've worked in a lot of different settings. I've worked in jails and prisons and communities. And I most recently was involved in being a family court service person. And that includes doing mediation with parents. So I'd meet with parents and help them come up with a custody plan. I also did a lot of child interviews for all ages of children up until 18 and tried to figure out how they felt and what they were going through and what their best interest was. And I also did custody evaluations where I would come in and I'd interview everyone involved, teachers and principals, the parents, aunts, uncles, and especially the kids. And I definitely was able to kind of see how things are working and what's not working and really gathered a deeper insight into what is going on in families and what things work, what things don't. And following, working in the court, I felt that there was a huge need for these kids, and not a lot of people understood their perspective. And I really felt that once I could understand the child's perspective, that's when I could step in and I could help the parents. And I could really talk to the parents about what was going on with their child and different ways to help them and co-parent. And so now that's what I do. I work
Amazing.
a lot with helping parents even with mediation and coming up with custody plans, working with the kids, working with the families, and just trying to be really helpful to people that don't have a lot of resources into this specific field.
So needed and so glad you're doing this really important work.
Yeah.
I could speak just on a personal note, 20 years ago, going through a really high conflict divorce and custody myself, and just navigating the court system and not knowing what to expect with, what is it, the 7:30 evaluation.
Yes.
And even as a therapist, it was definitely the most stressful time in my life, let alone having young children and what they were going through and not having the voice to be able to articulate, how it was
Exactly.
impacting them. So I'd really love to hear more about what you've learned in your work about how children are impacted by what is often the most stressful time
Yeah.
of a family's experience.
Definitely. Well, I think, it really depends on the age of the child
Mm-hmm.
to kind of, every different developmental
Yeah.
age, they're going through different things and they just need their parents and they need both of them.
Yeah.
I think that it gets really complicated because parents can feel one way about the other parent,
Mm-hmm.
but that child is the product of two people.
Right.
And so the child can see themselves in both
Right.
parents. So if both parents are angry at each other or say negative things to each other, that child really internalizes it. Even if they can't say, "Hey, mom and dad, I'm internalizing all of these
Right.
things that you're saying
Right.
about each other," and then I think it can complicate their relationship with their parents,
Absolutely.
especially with teens. The teenagers are very much, you might see that they are angry at one parent
Sure.
and they try to punish that parent for making things worse.
Right.
Or you go the other way and you have kids that are trying to do well in school and be the best and are very anxious about doing something wrong because they think, well, maybe I can help my parents get back together. And so
Yeah.
they want to have an ability to save their marriage.
Right.
And they get confused
Right.
and they don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Do you find in your work, because we find it at Insight oftentimes, that because particularly adolescents can be very articulate, that sometimes parents mistake their way of being able to communicate that developmentally that they're at the same level, and that they're able to tolerate the kinds of things that are happening within the family. Do you find that in your work that there's that misconception that families often have?
Yeah, I think it can go two ways.
Mm-hmm.
One, I think parents can look at an adolescent and say, oh, they're talking about how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
They're going through it. Yes, they're struggling, but they're
They're
fine.
okay.
They're okay.
Yeah.
Um,
They're doing well in school.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
When really that child is internally
Right.
struggling.
Yeah.
I have one, teenage experience with a client who labeled his parents' houses as wars and that he was like incognito going between both of these wars but having to look like he was on the side of each war that he was in,
Wow.
and his parents were great at talking to him
Mm-hmm.
and he was very expressive,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't want to make either of his parents feel bad. So
Right.
he didn't talk about what was truly going on, even though he had the linguistic
Yeah.
and emotional skills to be
Right.
able to do that. So I think these adolescents are sometimes really misrepresented,
Yep.
and that can be very difficult for that teen. And then that teen finds outlets, and
Right.
sometimes that can be drugs and alcohol or
Mm-hmm.
acting out, getting into trouble because they don't know what to do with these
With
internal
those. Yeah.
stressors.
Right. And they might end up at a place like Insight.
Exactly.
Right. Um, can you share a little bit, Janine, about your particular approach when working with high conflict families?
Yes. So my first approach is I need the parents to be on board.
Yeah.
There's only so much I can do with giving the child or teen a space, and
Yeah.
that's helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the full work.
Right.
I need the parents both involved. I need them to want to work on it.
Yeah.
I need them to meet with me and talk to me, and then I need for me to be able to share things that I can then see them put into play.
Right.
And so that's the very first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is gaining the trust of the adolescent because if they're, even if they're going through court or whatever it is, they don't trust that you're not going to tell one parent one thing or the other parent the other thing. And then sometimes the parents will then go to the teen and be like, oh, but you told Dr. K this,
Right.
this, and this. And then the child or the teen feels that I've betrayed them.
That's right.
And so, again, meeting with the parents first and getting them on board, that's something that I talk to them a lot about.
Yeah.
And then gaining that trust from the teen usually doesn't take too long if the parents are able to maintain good boundaries.
Right.
But that's definitely the first step.
Yeah. That's very aligned with our approach at Insight. Is our program is not drop off my adolescent 4 days a week and fix them. The families have to be willing to do the work too.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and then building the trust.
Yeah,
With
definitely.
teens. So yeah, very aligned in philosophy about
Right.
initial approaches.
Yeah. And I think when I work with the parents, some of the things that I help them with as well is making sure that they're taking care of themselves,
Absolutely.
knowing how to talk to the teenager.
Right.
Because you can tell your teenager, oh, this is a safe space for you to share.
Yeah.
But then the teenager doesn't quite know if that's safe
Yeah.
or how it might impact their future.
Right.
So one of the biggest things, and I've written an article on it, is say positive things. So there's a lot of things, research out there that says don't speak negatively.
Right.
But I think that's not enough.
Mm-mm.
I think that the child or teenager needs to only hear positive things about the parent because that's how they're allowed to feel safe.
That's right.
And so when a parent, for example, if a parent says, oh, well, you're coming to me for help with your homework, why doesn't your dad do it? Ugh, I wish that he would do that. You're not saying anything negative about the other parent, but that child is now put into a position where they either have to say, oh yeah, dad stinks at doing this, or yeah, he did something bad, and then now he's not supporting his dad, or he stays quiet, doesn't say anything, and doesn't feel safe to come across to mom, or he joins mom.
Right.
It puts them in a different spot. So I talk to parents about then saying something like, oh, your dad could help you. He's so smart at math. Adding just that extra positive thing
Yeah.
then can create a space where a child will actually feel comfortable and safe to maybe talk about their feelings because they know that you're going to support them and you're going to support the other parent.
Goes such a long way.
Yes.
But yeah, like what you're sharing, just that nuanced of, oh, why didn't your dad do that? It might not be a negative, but it sends a whole lot of messaging to a child, a teen, who's taking that in and has to figure out how to address that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the child, the uncertainty, there's all these uncertainties. And that teen may feel like they have no control of anything.
Right.
They don't have control of their parents separating or moving homes or their custody schedule. And so I really encourage parents to take that teen along in the process.
Yeah.
And ask, what they want, not who you want to spend time with.
Right.
Because that's a big no-no. Because
Right.
that puts them in, they have to choose
A
parents.
really bad position.
And even if you tell the teen, you don't have to choose between mom and dad or parent and parent, it still feels that way.
Sure.
So bringing them in to make decisions that they can make helps them feel a little bit powerful, and that helps them. And then if you're uncertain about something as a parent, bring them into that uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
That's really scary to feel that way. You must feel that way.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. Parents want to protect the children.
Right.
When they're going through separation. Oh, if we tell them I don't know where they're going to live, then they're going to get scared. But really, it empowers them to be like, oh, it's okay to feel
This
scared.
is a natural feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I'm curious if you could share a little bit about what families who are in high conflict, who are having to face court or maybe a full evaluation, some of the things that they can expect in that process. I know that's a big question. um, and not everyone has Dr. K to help them navigate through that system. So just some of the things that they
Sure.
can.
Well, I think what I would always recommend first is to see if you can do co-parenting therapy
Right.
before anything.
Yes.
So therapeutic mediation is very different than lawyer mediation.
Right.
So lawyers can help with custody,
Mm-hmm.
but a therapist can help do it in a different way that is very supportive of the child or children that are involved,
Right.
and can help with communication and can help kind of see these developmental things that the parents may not know about.
Right.
So if I could make any suggestions, that's the first place to start.
Right.
If they don't and they go through court, they will have to do mediation. In the state of California, that's required.
Yep.
So they meet with a mediator, which is what I used to do. But they don't spend a lot of time with that mediator.
Right.
It might just be a couple of hours
Right.
or at most.
Right.
And it doesn't help with the co-parenting or the child because they never meet the child.
There's no therapeutic component.
Exactly. And obviously the therapist that's working with them as the mediator wants to help that.
Of course.
But doesn't have the time.
Right.
And so, mediation is voluntary. You can
Right.
go in and get, any mediation. It's free. So if it's a small issue here and there, awesome. Go
Right.
get it on paper. I
Right.
always tell parents, have it written, have it in a court order. Even if you put it away in your drawer and never look at it again,
Yeah.
it's always good to have on paper because if something were to go wrong, you at least have a paper. And
Right.
that allows the child to then not be put in a situation where mom and dad don't know what to do and it's Christmas Eve.
Right.
Or they're fighting and it's Christmas
Right.
Eve. It's like, okay, here, there are some rules to that. And when you go to an evaluation, anytime you add court, it's really scary for children, for teens. The teens just probably show less because they want to show that they can handle it.
Right.
And they've got it, especially if they've got siblings.
Right.
They want to be strong and show that they can do this and that they're not scared. The moment I get them in my office, it's the fear, the anxiety, all of that is just, it comes out so quickly. So if you can avoid
Right.
having an evaluation or even a child interview, it is the best
So much
thing
better,
to do.
yeah.
So much better.
Yeah.
And the evaluator will then say all of the things that the child didn't say.
Right.
So then after the evaluation, they come home and or in the car and be like, why didn't you tell me this? Or you didn't feel this. And then there's no therapy afterwards. So the child is left stuck. And that's hard.
Trying to make sense of all of that.
Yeah, and feel that they did something
And feel
wrong.
like they did something wrong. Right.
And that is horrible for
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate what you said too about adolescents feeling like out of control in these situations. They already do so often, and it leads to, as you know, all kinds of potential issues of self-harm and substance use. But I think it's amplified times 10 at least
Right.
in these kind of situations when
Oh,
they
definitely.
can't make they have no control, like you said, over households and time frames
And going
all the-
between
and
households.
going between
and,
households.
You
And,
know, they've got different beds or different
Right.
clothes or different things at both
yeah,
households. It's
left
hard
my
to
MacBook
transition.
over there and all of that
Exactly.
stuff. So we're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk more about your work. Since the holidays are coming up, a little bit about how holidays in these kind of high conflict situations, custody and divorce, how adolescents are impacted
Yeah.
there, and just a little bit more about everything that you're doing. So,
Sounds great.
all right. So we will be back shortly with Dr. K. You're listening to Insight Treatment Hour. Welcome back to Insight Treatment Hour. My name is Carissa Provost, Clinical Director at Insight Treatment Center. And today we've been talking with Dr. Janine Kanaventi, otherwise known as Dr. K. And we were talking about her work in helping families who are often in high conflict and how to help support them as well as their teens. And so, what we're going to talk about now is how adolescents and families are impacted, just in light of the holidays, thinking about how when families are first going through custody battles and navigating going back and forth between homes, those first holidays, and what that looks like, and how adolescents are often impacted by that.
Yeah, it's holidays are hard, especially the first ones. And I think if parents can really look from their child's perspective of this is the first time I don't have my parents together. And what are the holidays about? Togetherness. So having some grace for these children who don't have one of their parents with them. Always suggest to parents, again, as I stated, first thing is know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Have that be very clear. This is, you're going to spend Christmas Eve here, Christmas Day here, New Year's, Hanukkah, whatever holiday it is, and talk about that with the child. How does that feel? Um, I also like telling parents to maybe make new traditions,
Right.
things that they can do just with dad, just with mom, just
Mm-hmm.
with whatever parent, because that's what they like.
Yes.
And but you also have to not forget about the old traditions.
Right.
So if you always decorated the tree on Christmas Eve, do that. Always decorate the tree on Christmas Eve.
Right.
And so even if the other parent isn't there, it's really helpful for them to feel some kind of consistency and they enjoy that.
Yes.
And bringing them into that, especially the teens. Hey, I know that you and me and mom used to do this, this, and this. It's a little bit different now. What would you like to do? Do you want to continue the same tradition? Do you want to do something different? Here's some ideas. And allow that child to be able to think about it and weigh in. And I think that can be special. And you can talk to them about not erasing the old memories, but also creating new memories that can be special.
Right. So agree. It's really important to include teens in planning those holidays, and what do we want to keep as traditions? What do we want to let go of? What do we want to do different? Really important to have them a part of those conversations, and like you said, allowing for grace, especially the first round
Yeah,
can be
definitely.
really hard. So and then sometimes I'm speaking for my own kids. They got to a place where, hey, this is a better deal. I get two
Right?
Christmases,
More
more
presents.
presents, right? But it's hard to see that that's a possibility initially when you're
Right.
first navigating that.
Yeah.
Um, and really important to allow them to hold for the parents to be able to hold space for their teen to be able to talk about what it's like for them to not have mom here or dad here. And even though the parent might have very strong feelings about the other parent that aren't, so amorous, to be able to allow their child to
Yeah.
speak about that.
I think that's so important. Still, it goes along with the only say positive things
Yeah.
about the other parent,
Right.
but that parent can talk about how they feel. Oh, I really miss that we did all this together, or I miss that sense of family.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel?
Yeah.
Because I think we as parents, we want to make everything perfect and everything good and everything better, but it's okay to talk about the sad things. We
Mm-hmm.
can talk about how different it is
Mm-hmm.
and that we miss the other parent. And I think if you allow your child that space to talk about the other parent, it feels good.
Right.
I see so many teens who are like, I can't say anything positive about the other parent because it's going to make the parent that I'm with upset.
Upset.
So then they hold it
Yep.
all in and they smile for the camera on,
Mm-hmm.
whatever holiday morning. And it creates so much anxiety, so much depression. And that's where we see all of these other, negative behaviors and acting out
Yeah.
and going to use drugs and alcohol. It's a lot easier to, be numb during these times because it's too hard to navigate when parents don't allow for it or they pretend like everything's fine
Right.
in fear of it not being fine.
Right.
But it is not fine.
Right.
And it's okay to say it's not fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever find that you have a family where there's just so much bitterness and anger between the two parents that it's hard for them to even say, this is hard for me too. I miss this about your mom, or I miss this about your dad. They're so angry, and the kids feel that,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
like you were saying before, maybe they're not saying anything negative about the other parent. They're allowing for space for their teen to share some feelings and emotions, but they're so angry that they can't say anything
Yeah.
positive.
I mean, I think that probably is the majority of cases
Yeah,
that, parents kind of have to put away some of those feelings and identify in their head what are parent issues and what are parent child issues.
yeah,
And that doesn't change with the child's age.
right,
Even when a child is 30, there are some things that are parent issues that the child should never know about.
right,
And it is your responsibility as a parent to keep those in and get your own support with that.
right.
And I help parents a lot with that piece
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, how can I say something nice about him when he, cheated on me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but that's a parent issue and not a parent child issue.
Right.
So I tell parents all the time, your ex partner is no longer your ex partner. They are like your coworker.
Co-parent, yeah, co-worker, right,
It's treat them how you would at somebody at work who did you wrong.
right,
You are not going to talk to your boss about how bad, Tom was the other day. You're
yeah,
going to be nice, you're going to be courteous, you're going to get the job done, and that's what you're doing as a parent.
right,
So as much as you can do that, take care of yourself and find a way to figure out how to say positive things about the other
right.
parent. Because the child feels it. I mean,
They feel it.
I
Yeah.
tell parents all the time, your child has depended on you for their survival
Mm-hmm.
since day one.
Yes,
So they know how you feel sometimes better than you know how you feel.
that's right.
So you really have to be in check of your feelings and get that support and do that self-care on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your child really means that much to you, that's the work you need to do.
Yeah, and you didn't always detest the person,
Did
right?
not always. There was something you must have liked about them,
Yeah,
even if it was, a one night stand and you
right.
didn't really know them.
But
And guess what? If
there's
you
something.
if you don't know anything that you like about that parent, figure that out.
Find something.
Find something.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. I
Right.
love that he loves his mom so much.
Right.
Even though that might have also been a
Right.
negative thing,
Right.
you need to find the positive things in that parent, and if you can't find it, you need to look for it. It
That's
is
right.
your
Dig deep.
responsibility.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And maybe write them down.
Mm-hmm.
Have a list, because when we do those things, we can they have to be honest.
Yes.
We can't say, "Oh, your dad's really good at math," when
Oh,
you think
kids
he's
will
not
pick
intelligent.
that up in a heartbeat. They have
Exactly.
the BS radar. Right?
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
yeah. They know. They
Yes.
know. So
Yeah.
find what it is and have it be honest and genuine.
Right. What about I find this happens with parents and at Insight and other programs where okay, they've done all that. They're doing everything with their kids. They're saying positive things about the other parent, but their walls are thin, and so they're on the phone with their bestie or something, and that's where they're unleashing,
Right.
some of their real feelings about the other parent, and teens hear
Oh,
things
yeah.
that we think sometimes as parents that they don't hear.
Yeah.
You hear
Yeah,
about
I
that.
I
Yeah.
always tell parents, I was like, your kids, here in California, your kids will hear you in Alaska.
Right.
It does not matter. And guess what? Your kids might be going through your emails, going through your
Yes.
texts. They want to
They
know.
want to know.
They want to know what's going on, what is being said.
They eavesdrop.
Exactly. So I always suggest doing like a parenting app that is password protected.
Yes.
So not just your phone,
Right.
but password protected on your phone. And you don't have to talk to your bestie and unleash while you're at home with the kids.
Right.
That is part of figuring out how to be a good parent.
Right.
Go somewhere where the child is not there. Do it while they're in school.
Right.
Never choose to talk about the other parent Even to Auntie May that never calls.
Right.
Schedule the time
Yes.
because it will never bode well for you as a parent, and it only makes your child feel horrible.
Yeah.
Even if your child is saying horrible things about the other parent, sometimes they'll say it to make you happy.
That's right.
Oh yeah, mom, dad is really bad at math.
You're right. Oh, but my kid feels the same way that I do, and
It's not true.
not true.
Yeah, they will not tell you the truth most often to protect you and
That's
to
right.
protect themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, can you share, Dr. K, some do's and don'ts for parents who might be listening who might be struggling um, with their with how to navigate this? You've shared a lot of really great things already about not speaking negatively to speaking positively. What are some other things that they can do, and how do they know if their teen is having a hard time when there's high family conflict?
It's difficult knowing
Yeah.
because they say the right things,
Right.
right? And I don't mean that being that they're the correct things, but they want to say the right things.
Yeah.
And so I tell parents to offer the space to not, especially with teens, to not necessarily ask them how they're feeling or what they think about things, but to say, I'm wondering if you're feeling this way. You don't have to talk about it, but I want you to know that I'm here when you do. And because when you ask them direct questions, sometimes they feel like, "Ooh, is this like a ploy to try and get me to say something, or what are they looking for? What do they want me to say?"
Right. What am I supposed to say?
I have heard kids say so many times, "I just want things to be equal.
Right.
I just want it to be equal."
Yeah.
And so, in order for it to be equal, sometimes they say things that they think you want to hear to have you feel calm. And
Right.
so, really, just not necessarily asking them, "How do you feel about your dad? How do you feel about your mom?"
Fine.
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly. So, kind of seeing, offering the space for them. When you need it, you can come talk to me.
Right.
So, if you're saying the positive things, you're not talking within their hearing distance, you will create a safe space for
Yeah.
them to actually come to you and maybe be able to talk about that.
Sure.
And remember that you're not their friend.
Right.
Like, you can be a safe place to talk, but they need guidance as well.
That's a really great point, and I think that's hard for some families to navigate. Like, I want to be able to be that parent where my child can talk to me about anything.
Yeah.
And so, where's the boundary of parent versus friend?
Yeah. And that can be difficult. And we want we also want our children in divorce situations to be with us.
Sure.
I want you to want to come spend time with me. So you might overly make things perfect and good so that they want it. And then the child might feel like you're trying too hard or you're not talking about the real things. And so we can tell them that it's difficult for us, but they're also not our therapists either.
Right.
So to know that boundary too. And so, and to get the support again with, parents that, I see. This is one of the things that we work at. And they ask me, is this a friend thing to do or is this a
That's
parent
a
thing
parent
to
thing,
do?
right?
Especially with teens because it's
It's
different.
close. Sometimes it
Yeah.
feels. Right.
And sometimes you do things that are a friend thing to do, like
Right.
hanging out and laughing. But you also need to make sure that you're doing the other side of providing guidance,
Yes.
keeping the same kind of boundaries. If you used to be the parent that made them do homework after school before they watch TV, keep doing that.
Right.
The children will look for that kind of consistency. So don't, oh, you want, an Xbox and play it all day long? Cool, do
Sure.
it. No,
As long as
let's
you're
not.
here home with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't do that. They need that guidance.
Yeah.
And then again, your self care for yourself. I mean, if you look at it, all of the research has shown that parents are the biggest predictor of children's mental health, emotional health, social health,
Yes.
of that success.
Right.
So, parents are a big deal at this point. And if you are unsure how to navigate that, get support doing it. It's worth it.
Sure. That's a really great point. I think sometimes parents think, not always, but some parents think, my teen doesn't really want to hang out with me anyways. They want to, they're all about their peers at that age. And so it doesn't really bother them that I'm speaking negatively about their father,
Right.
or, that they're not, their schedule has changed because they're, more about their friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're not really looking to me in the way that they used to when they were little. And that's just
Right.
not true.
It's not true. And there's a reason why 18 is that age
Hmm.
where now they can make decisions on their own.
Yeah.
Even in the court, it is 18.
Yeah.
And, I've worked with parents who are struggling with custody of a 17-and-a-half-year-old.
Right.
And I think, cognitively, they they don't have as great of ability to see what may hurt them in the future.
Right.
And then that is left to either the therapist helping the parents, or for the parents to kind of see. You can see that, okay, your child doesn't want to see their mom and they're
Hmm.
angry at what she did. That doesn't mean that it's okay for that child to not have
Have
a
a relation.
relationship
Yeah.
with their mom, because
Right.
when they turn 25 or 30, it's a big difference.
Yes.
They need that.
Yes. So how do families work with that if they have in that example a teen who is resistant to going to a parent's house because they're very angry?
Right.
How do they navigate that?
So, I've done a lot of reunification therapy.
Hmm.
That's kind of an old term. We call it conjoint therapy.
Hmm.
So, in doing that, it's difficult because usually one parent has aligned with the child and is actively kind of thwarting the other parent, even if it looks like they're not.
Right.
They're not doing all of the things to support that relationship. So the conjoint therapy helps provide space for the child to talk about what they're going through,
Hmm.
and for the therapist to work with both of the parents about what they can do, what they're not doing, and try and help that relationship be the most important thing that they need to work on.
Right. So important. Um, I don't think that there are enough therapists and clinical psychologists who are doing this really important work, Dr. K. And it's just families are going through this every day,
Oh yeah.
unfortunately. And I just really appreciate the work that you're
Yeah.
doing. And like I said, it's very aligned, although we don't work on that end of things when adult families are going through high conflict and custody. Um, we kind of get it the back end sometimes.
Right, right.
And so I just really appreciate your work, and your philosophy is, again, very aligned with the work that we do, that it's not a one person issue, it's a family
Right, for
issue, whether the
sure.
families are intact or not.
Right.
And so I just want to thank you again for being here on the show. It's
Yes.
been a real honor to have you. And if you can share real briefly how folks can reach you and contact you
Yeah.
should they need your services.
Yeah, definitely. So, you can find my website. It's the easiest way. My company is Canon Wellness. It's KANUN wellness.com, and all of my information is there. Again, I'm doing reunification or conjoint therapy, co parenting, working with kids, all of it. And there's not a lot of people, as you said, that are doing it because we're not trained in it.
Mm-mm.
We have to learn from
Learn it,
doing
yes.
it. And I've got the experience to do that, fortunately, and enjoy it so much. So
All right. Well, I really appreciate you. Thank you for being with us this afternoon on Insight Treatment Hour. And thank you to KHTS, Santa Clarita's hometown station. We appreciate the time. Welcome back to Insight Treatment Hour. I got a little ahead of myself because I was having so much fun talking to Dr. K, but fortunately, we have some more time left to hear a little bit more from her. Again, we are talking about working with families who are often in high conflict or going through difficult divorce and custody situations, and learning more about the work that Dr. K does and how families can better provide the best environment possible for their teens who are currently facing us really difficult and challenging circumstances.
Yeah.
So thank you
Yes.
for being back, and I
Thank you.
apologize for jumping the gun.
No worries.
So if you can share a few things, Dr. K, about what you wish families knew as they were embarking on this really difficult and challenging circumstance and situations
Yeah.
in their lives, whether it's divorce, separation, custody, or just really difficult challenges within their family system.
Yeah. I think the first thing that a lot of parents don't know is that there's no book that tells you how to do all of this.
Right.
And gives you all the information for how to make it the best thing or to make it easy. But there is support. And so, really making sure that they find that support. And I think maybe I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but a therapist can really help you navigate the system and navigate what to do, even if you are already in court. But the sooner that you do it, the better. The sooner that you get a custody order and you just have it on paper,
Right.
the sooner that you are able to kind of address those issues. I mean, most of the worst situations, the most difficult situations that I've seen are parents who wait months or years.
Yes.
Or a couple of years.
Yes.
And then their child has already spent so much time in turmoil. And maybe Department of Children and Family Services is called. And then you have another layer of difficulty that impacts the children the most.
Sure.
And so that's really, time is of the essence to make sure that you're starting to do the things that you could be doing to be a good parent, doing that early, getting the information that you can implement early. And so it's not always looking to lawyers to begin with, but
Right.
maybe what would happen if we looked at therapists to begin with instead of lawyers and then dealt with lawyers afterwards?
Sure. I think that is a really important point. Oftentimes, I think parents think that in some cases that they're going to be able to navigate this in an amicable way, and that it's going to run pretty smooth, that they've had conversations that have gone pretty well, and that might be true, hopefully.
Right.
It is. But even in the best of scenarios, when families are splitting, the impact it has on an adolescent, even in the best of situations,
Right.
really important to get some support.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely
Therapy.
for both the parents, for the
Both the parents, the child,
Again,
the whole gamut.
Just have it all in writing, know what you don't know, because we can think it's amicable, but we don't know what we don't know. So
Right.
see somebody about maybe those pitfalls that you might fall into, even in good co-parenting relationships.
Yes.
There's a lot of them. So really kind of getting that information early is helpful
Right.
in the long run for these kids and for yourself.
Yeah. And so true. There aren't books on how to navigate this, and really getting. I agree. Therapy is. I mean, we're biased as therapists, but can really benefit.
Right. Or
families.
there's 1,000 books and they
There's
all
1,000
say
books,
different
right.
things,
Yes.
but it's not a person kind of dealing with what you're going through.
Right.
And I tell parents therapy is going to be less than a lawyer, so
That's right.
do that. Go
Yep.
go that route.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Again, really, really important work that you're doing, and it just is so meaningful for families. I like I said, I know for experience that have the ability to connect with a therapist that's going to walk alongside them and help them navigate what might be the most difficult challenge that they might ever face as a family. So
Definitely.
yeah, thank you again
Yeah, thanks
so
for
much
having
for
me.
being here. Of
Appreciate
course,
it.
come back again sometime.
Of course.
All right, so we are ending our afternoon on Insight Treatment Hour, KHTS, Hometown Station, Santa Clarita.